This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV on YouTube, and this is my weekly review of the points I find interesting. In Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter, there was a lot I didn't find interesting this week. He went very into a lot of detail on the latest Janelle Grant accusations, which again, at this point, let's just get it in court and hear it out. It's all hearsay at this point, and I'm sick of hearing about her. To be perfectly honest with you, here's something interesting. Hulk Hogan appeared on the Pat McAfee show and said that the reason he was booed in Los Angeles for Raw was because the last time he wrestled there, he was with the NWO, and that was why he was booed. I looked it up on Grok, and Hulk Hogan's last time actually wrestling in LA was at WrestleMania 21 at the Staples Center, April 3rd, 2005. He was a babyface teaming up with Shawn Michaels to defeat Muhammad Hassan and Daivari. So that was actually the last time he appeared in LA. He was not with the NWO, he was with Shawn Michaels, defeating the evil Muhammad Hassan. So the other thing I will say is I will give Hogan credit. The only thing people are still talking about from that original Netflix Raw is him getting booed. That's the most significant thing that's happened in the Netflix era of Raw, unquestionably. Viewership has declined considerably since that first airing. But it is funny that both The Undertaker and Seth Rollins have recently taken shots at Hulk Hogan getting booed, alluding that it was likely more due to his past racist remarks than him being in the NWO the last time he wrestled there, which again is a lie. The other major lawsuit involving WWE, Vince McMahon, and Linda McMahon is a class action suit involving 5 unnamed ring boys from the 1980s suing the company related to alleged sexual abuse from past WWE agents. The suit was put on hold based on a constitutional challenge. But on February 3rd, the Maryland Supreme Court voted 4-3 that the Child's Victim Act of 2023 was constitutional, and they will go ahead and let retroactive cases be heard. That one is most likely to be settled because that's a lot of skeletons in the closet coming up. And they are such a multi-billion-dollar company. You would just want that put to bed. There was at least one settlement made when that stuff first came up in the early '90s, but I guess this is new stuff that some lawyer is filing, probably based off that Vince McMahon Netflix documentary where they discuss that a little bit, I believe. As far as the live attendance from the Royal Rumble this past weekend, where there wasn't much surprises in the Royal Rumble, The Rock didn't appear, Brock Lesnar didn't appear. There was a lot of disappointment that John Cena didn't win the Royal Rumble because at this point, he just loses all the time and loses to people that shouldn't necessarily beat him. And I think people are sick of seeing him lose. And he's definitely. I mean, hopefully he can get it back. But I mean, his Wipeout show was just canceled, so he's definitely not as popular as he once was. The other interesting thing, though, and I'll just digress for 1 second, his Wipeout show was canceled on TBS, and it gets similar ratings to Collision. And I mean, WBD already canceled Rampage. It'll be interesting to see how much further they let Collision drop before they canceled it, or if there's some type of ironclad deal with AEW where they can't cancel Collision because supposedly Warner Brother Discoveries might own a percentage of AEW. But apparently, the interesting thing about the Royal Rumble, Meltzer points out that during Levesque's post-show press conference, he announced over 70,000 fans at Lucas Oil Stadium, while a number was put up that said 65,740. Still a huge number. The biggest surprise of the show was Alexa Bliss, who returned from maternity leave. Apparently got the biggest pop of the night. There was only 4 matches, and the show was 4.5 hours long. The other notable thing was Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest had heat with LA over, quote, someone getting more shit than we agreed with. Effed up the story elements being presented properly, end quote. I'm so sick of hearing people talk about stories in wrestling. It's just so lame. We're trying to tell a story, and this guy went into business to himself. Well, here's what you do. Here's what you do. You hold off doing what you were going to do. You lay a little beat down on him. Then you go back to doing what you're going to do. That's how it worked in the old days, but you're all a bunch of you know what now. Not the Brock Lesnar's, but the people like Drew McIntyre. We discussed this and he did something else. I'm going to whine and bitch about it now because he's more over than me, even though I'm getting a bigger push than him. To me, I mean, this is just sour grapes because McIntyre and Damian Priest, I mean, again, they've got more of a push than LA Knight, who they made lose to Nakamura, for God's sake, who has zero buzz these days. And LA Knight is still more over right now than McIntyre, Priest, or Nakamura, who God only knows why they put the title on him. Because he wasn't over at all, and they didn't even give him many matches as champion. I don't even know if he's still Intercontinental Champion, but I have no sympathy for McIntyre and Priest whining and complaining. They're babies and they're divas. Dwayne Johnson apparently now has 8,047 shares of TKO stock, with more that were added this past week. Or he had an additional 8,047 shares, putting his total to 297,720. So he has a total of $46,962,353 in WWE stock. The interesting thing is he has that much stock, and they had all these people at the Royal Rumble. A lot of them probably expected The Rock to do some type of appearance, and he didn't. To me, that's a disappointment. Like you have to say, you can't just say that they look at the crowd that they got, yes, but you can't say that a lot of those people did not expect The Rock to appear, because there's been a lot of alluding over the past year that The Rock was going to be in this year's WrestleMania, which it doesn't look like he's going to have a match at it this year at this point. But like, there was a lot of people thinking he was going to do something at Royal Rumble. And in the end, Jey Uso won, which I'll give them credit for. Nobody expected. However, that is highly... They didn't even use Goldberg in the Royal Rumble, for God's sake. And he's under contract. Like, to me, it's a highly disappointing. I'm glad I didn't watch anything but the highlights. The matches were very long, other than the tag team match, which fell flat, featuring the Motor City Machine Guns, who Triple H has a hard-on for, against, I think, Gargano and somebody else. TMZ is reporting that Ashley Flair, who was on her third marriage at 38 years old with Andrade, were separated this past June and officially divorced in October. They're both under contract to WWE. And apparently Ric Flair himself, is back doing work for WWE. The January 31st SmackDown in Indianapolis. This is interesting. The day before the Royal Rumble, all these people coming in for the Royal Rumble, they were in a building that holds 18,000. They had 11,076 fans. You would have thought that the SmackDown before would have done a bit better. Raw February, and I'm not saying 11,000 fans for wrestling isn't good. I'm just saying with everyone traveling in, you would have thought that would have been closer to 18,000. Raw February 3rd from Cleveland, 12,639 fans, a 19,452 seat arena. Again, good crowd. Post Royal Rumble Raw, considering they don't do house shows anymore, and a lot of people will travel to events. I mean, you'd expect a little bit more, but that's by no stretch of the imagination a bad crowd. Duke Hudson, for anyone who knows who that is, NXT wrestler from Chase U, real name Brandon Vicks, has been released. Apparently, he's been released for a while, but only came out this week. AEW Dynamite this week from College Park, Georgia, had about 2,700, including comps, in a 5,000 seat arena. So they are going to some smaller arenas. NXT beat Dynamite again. It seems like NXT beats Dynamite all the time now. 0.20 rating for NXT. Dynamite only got a 0.17. Collision got their second lowest viewership of all time this past weekend, 0.04. It seems like they're giving up trying to make Collision good. And here's something interesting. Mercedes Moné, who rarely wrestles for AEW, and she is getting paid a lot of money. The talk around is $4 million-ish. Okay. Again, I don't know if she's ever done anything on Collision, which is a dying show at this point. She has announced she's doing an independent wrestling show in New York in March. And there's a lot of AEW people that are top guys that they put on indie show. I mean, Jericho, they let do an indie appearance for GCW not too long ago. It's like your Collision show is dying, but you let some of the people you're paying huge money to do indie shows, and you don't put them on Collision. And I know they do put Jericho on Collision here and there, but I don't know if MJF has ever been on Collision for all the money they're paying him. They're letting him do CMLL shows. I don't know. It just gives me a headache to think about the horrible business decisions that company makes, such as hiring. They already have a bloated roster, but they've now hired Elias, who's done practically nothing since being released by WWE. Here's another bizarre business deal, as we reported last week. Maria Kanellis, her deal expired. They paid for her university. She had enough time. They hardly used her under this deal, so they had enough time to send her to university where she completed a business degree. So they've released her, but they're keeping Mike Bennett, her husband. Now, they rarely use Maria Kanellis. I can't remember anything she's done for the company, although I know she managed a few people here and there. But like, if you're gonna release one of them, release Mike Bennett, who's one of the most boring wrestlers of all time and has less name value than Maria. At least if people are flipping through the channels, they see Maria Kanellis, and I'm not saying I would keep her. I'm just saying between the two, at least if you're flipping through, oh, I remember her from WWE. Let's see what she's doing. But to keep boring Mike Bennett, I mean, that just makes no sense to me. Soraya, aka Paige, says her AEW contract expires next September. She told TMZ this. And she said she loves WWE. They made her, they gave her her career. She's very appreciative to them. She says one day, who knows? But she loves her time in AEW. And of course, she loves her time in AEW. The last time she wrestled for AEW was October. We're now February 7th. AEW, the company that pays you to do nothing. Like what the hell has the Big Show Paul White done in AEW? Remember Mark Henry in AEW? They paid him 3 years for doing pretty much nothing. How did he pay them back when they released him? He's done nothing but insult the company. Like it's anyone that thinks Eric Bischoff wasted money in WCW, there's absolutely no comparison to the amount of money Tony Khan wastes. He's one of the most wasteful people in the world. For instance, Ray Phoenix did an interview this past week. By the way, they had Penta under contract and did nothing with them. Now he's one of the guys with the most buzz right now in WWE. Ray, you could argue that Penta has more buzz right now than Drew McIntyre. You could make a legitimate argument of that at this period of time, Penta has more buzz than Drew McIntyre. Anyways, Ray Phoenix, who's been sitting at home for a very, very long time, and they've apparently removed all of his merchandise, but it's not like he's going to be the next John Cena. They're just being dicks about it. They're not being dicks because they're paying him to do nothing. They're paying him a lot of money to sit at home and do nothing. So I can't feel bad for him. I work very, very hard for my money. I've had 3 jobs at many points in my life. I still have 2 jobs. So I'm not going to feel bad for these people making hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars to sit at home. But Ray Phoenix, who would be in the hundreds of thousands category, says he's ready to go back to work for AEW if they call him. Meltzer points out that they aren't calling him. The buzz with WWE on Netflix is declining for sure. There's so many ads. And I know it's not like that in all the countries. But for instance, like I have Netflix now and I am in the US for the winter here. And it's like we don't even get the pay-per-views with Netflix here. So it's like you only get Raw actually. And some old programming that they've put up. It's like it's not as good as Canada, where if you have Netflix, you can get Raw, SmackDown, the pay-per-views, and I think possibly NXT too. I really don't know. But I mean, here what you get Raw with all the ads, where everything else on Netflix doesn't have ads that I've seen. Why would I not just watch the highlights on YouTube of anything good that I hear happen where I have YouTube Premium and I don't have to pay for the ads? Thank you, Mop Shop. Yes, it is. We just passed 418,000 subscribers today, actually. Thank you guys for that. Yeah, Hogan claims a lot of stuff. And again, people are talking about him, but to make that claim that the last time he was in, I mean, he lies a lot and it gets publicity every time he lies. And maybe that's one of the reasons why he's booed, because people are sick of him lying. But I will say this. I find his interviews entertaining, even though he lies all the time. I'd rather watch a Hulk Hogan interview than to sit through an episode of Raw. That's just a fact. So I'm not personally hating on him. All I'm doing is calling him out on his latest lie that the last time he wrestled in LA he was with the NWO, and that is why they booed him in LA. Yeah, sure. I really believe that. Anyways, I'm off to the gym. I wish everyone a great Friday.